into this dark, unforgiving glass eye, the mesh of the microphone. Tell it your deepest thoughts, hopes, fears, and desires. We will take these emotions, turn them, and feed them back to you, for we have goals that your feelings will assist. This is how we rule, from the shadows, playing your emotions like puppet strings. We lead you to destinations that we have prepared, and you willingly oblige, thinking these decisions to be your own. When you do as we wish, we reward you, and when you go against us, we punish you. In a million subtle ways, we influence your supposedly free choice. By this method, we rule over a population convinced that they are the masters of their own destiny. Welcome to the Empire of Lies.
Yes, welcome indeed, everyone. Welcome back to the Empire of Lies. This is our first 2025 stream, and there will be many more this year. I would like to apologize for my tardiness. I have had a long day. I am dealing with a lot of things. The battery pack, the charger pack for the battery of my gaming laptop is not working, and so that is out of sorts. So I don't have my usual timekeeping device. Also, I think it's because, due to other things I don't want to get into, for food today, I had to eat a frozen pizza from Walmart, and it has made me very dysenterically sick, let's say, and I've been in and out of the bathroom several times today. My husband was nursing me and telling me what time it was with the only little timepiece thing that we have in the living room, and apparently it's around an hour and 20 minutes out of whack. So I come in here to meet up with Chris and start the stream, and it's like 50 minutes late, and that's totally my fault for many reasons. I apologize. I've had a hectic day, and there are things I don't want to go into, so we'll just leave it off there. You all have my apologies. But I have all of my prep work done for the stream. I feel good enough to do the stream, so I wanted to go ahead and follow through, since we talked about it all day today on social media and bigged up what we're going to talk about, and also because this is an extremely important episode. We are going to be talking about incredibly dark, heavy subject matter tonight. But I want you to keep in mind that that's what it's like being an adult, is facing the facts and the ugliness of life and deciding to soldier on. And I'll be talking about one of the only positive ways to spin this heavy subject material at the end for my part. And Chris, is there anything you would like to say to preface the stream before we get into it tonight?
Yeah, this is a very, very hard subject to cover. I had a lot of difficulty writing about this, so my script is a little bit disjointed, but rather than go into the sort of Kafkaesque horror that is the UK rape gangs scandal, I'm going to be talking more about the obfuscation that made it possible, the infiltration of government institutions, and the thought tricks and other tricks that are being used in order to make people sort of okay with this, to justify it. And I think it speaks sort of very, very clearly to some of the other stuff that we've covered on this show, how people can cover up great evils in the name of ideology. And, you know, in this case, the ideology is multiculturalism, a thing that has been deemed so important by the powers that be, primarily due to the post-war consensus that the fallout doesn't really matter. The UK seems to have basically decided that their own citizens are not really important. What is far more important is citizens from other countries, and to put forward the idea that, you know, they're so multiracial, so multiculturalism, so multicultural. I mean, also at this point, I'd just like to point out that if anyone sort of says, oh, you know, there's no downside to multiculturalism, as if anyone could really say that, it is now very, very clear with this that there are very significant, violent downsides to multiculturalism, which is always presented as this sort of, you know, oh, it's you know, better street food and cheaper wages. Yes, well, it's also rape, murder, decay of the social fabric, and just generally destruction of society as a whole.
And I hate to sound like a libertarian again, like I did 15 years ago, but cheaper wages is not good for the economy in the way that you're told it is. Cheaper
Yep.
wages are good for international billionaires that suck wealth out of your community and destroy you. That's who
Yep.
it's good for.
Yep, indeed. And if we weren't constantly printing money and constantly in a state of inflation, wages would not have to keep rising the way that they are, which would not necessitate importing millions of foreigners in order to keep wages down. I think I talked about that on the episode that we did about usury, but this is sort of,
I think we did, yeah.
Yeah.
Before we get into the meat of this tonight, I would like to remind everyone that we will be taking paid chats in the usual spots. Entropy, which I should have up and running. Let me make sure. It says it's live. But this is a prepared presentation that will last between 45 and 50 minutes, and we will be addressing your paid chats at the end, and I'll pop up the reminder banner towards the end, and we'll get to all of those lovely financial gifts that you guys send in at the very end. So, Chris, I will mute myself, and again, I apologize to everyone listening for being late. I've had one of the hardest weeks of my life the last few days, and some things really hit me today with other problems, but I'm here and the show will go on, and I love all of you for your support. Thank you. Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, let's in Smollen then. Wait a second. I have a picture for this. Sorry, just got to get the right window. This is the alternate thumbnail that I made for this episode. I quite like this. I'm getting it better.
It's quite good. I liked it better than what I chose, but you know, thumbnails are all about grabbing attention. So
the grooming gangs scandal is currently rocking the UK, not only harming the legitimacy of the Labour government and government in general, but this abominable crime has the potential to destroy the fundamental pillar of the current ontological order, which is that, number one, all cultures are equal. There is nothing better or worse about any culture. And number two, that at the same time, white culture is particularly bad and wrong. That whites deserve mass immigration and must under no circumstances organize in any kind of ethnic self-interest because of Mustache Man. These formulations are absurd upon their face. If all cultures are equal, how can white culture be especially bad? How are the white English working class guilty for the rise of Hitler when it was the English, along with the Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders, and Americans, who left their homes, traveled across the seas, and lost their lives to liberate Europe? Like all thought regimes, it is prudent that those who are indoctrinated into them do not give their basis too much thought, lest they come to realize the inherent flaws in their formulation. The undermining of a deeply held thought regime can cause immense psychological harm, and many will fight very hard to keep such a regime intact, even when contrary evidence is staring them in the face. However, once the seal is broken and the thought regime discredited, what follows is a total undermining of the entire belief system, a term known in psychological circles as ontological shock, which is the profound disruption in an individual's understanding of reality, identity, or worldview, triggered by an encounter with information, experiences, or phenomena that challenge deeply held beliefs about existence, the nature of reality, or one's place in it. It often forces a person to reevaluate their fundamental assumptions about the world, leading to existential uncertainty or transformation. Now, sometimes this can be a good thing. If you believe in a lie, there is no way around it except for you to eventually be told that the lie is untrue. And anti-racism, which is an outgrowth of the post-World War II liberal world order, is fundamentally a part of that thought regime. I'm just going to highlight this tweet. I'm borrowing a page from Academic Agent where I'm reading my own tweets online, but I think this is a pretty good one.
Hey, it's the era we live in.
The backlash against anti-racism is beginning. There is simply no good way to spin the rape gang scandals. After all the mealy-mouth posturing about fighting misogyny, violence against women and girls, which were all directed at the white population, it is finally coming to mainstream awareness that these were simply cynical ploys to downplay the horrific effects of mass migration on the native population and make sure they kept their mouths shut. It is going to be biblical. And indeed it is. Some stats. This is the kind of thing that the UK has been dealing with for quite a while. Indeed, one of the reasons it seems that Elon Musk created such a stir is that these things have been known in the UK for a long time. They have been continually swept under the carpet, not only by the soy whites who are enamored of the idea of multiculturalism and scared of being seen as racist, but also the Pakistani populations themselves, who are incredibly insular and have taken over functions of local government in the areas that they have settled, using threats and violence, something they are very familiar with, in order to make sure that nobody talks about it. Now, the lies that are involved in this thought regime are making people crazy. This is one of the reasons, in my opinion, why everyone is losing their mind. The overabundance of thought-terminating cliches make people unable to complete many complex thoughts and prevent them from making an accurate accounting of the world around them. Of course, this is the entire point of the practice. If you can stop people from looking at reality accurately, and if you can condition people instead of observing for themselves what reality is, but to wait for their master or the government to tell them what that thought is, you gain an immense amount of control. This is fundamentally doublethink. This is from Orwell. Doublethink, a simultaneous belief in two contradictory ideas. This is how Winston Smith described it in 1984. To know and not to know. To be conscious of complete truthfulness while telling carefully constructed lies. To hold simultaneously two opinions which cancel each other out, knowing them to be contradictory and believing in both of them. To use logic against logic. To repudiate morality whilst laying claim to it. To believe that democracy is impossible, and yet that the party was the guardian of democracy. To forget whatever it was necessary to forget, then to draw it back into memory again at the moment when it is needed, and then promptly forget it again. And above all, to apply the same process to the process itself. That was the ultimate subtlety. Consciously to induce unconsciousness, and then once again to become unconscious of the act of hypnosis that you had just performed. Even to understand the word doublethink involved the use of doublethink. So an excellent example of this is racism.
Yep.
Race does not exist until suddenly it does exist, when it is necessary to define who gets special privileges. Then it is immediately forgotten. This kind of intellectual derangement is so incredibly corrosive for a society that the Americans were not wrong when they said that free speech is the bedrock of a free society. The risk of widespread ideological capture is so much more vast than random people saying crazy stuff. The downsides of freedom of expression are worth the risk. And the question I'm sort of wondering is, how far back does this susceptibility to subversion go? Do these tricks, were they always with us? Even before World War I and World War II? I would put forward the idea that they really started in the era of mass education. If you remember our episode on Jacques Ellul, he posited that the reason why education was so important to the elites was not just so they could teach people to work in factories, but so they could teach them to understand and respond to propaganda. Someone who cannot read cannot read the newspaper. Someone who cannot read cannot be told what to think. None of these tricks work upon the illiterate. And I think this is a big reason why the modern age, post-World War II, is so enmeshed in this idea.
And let me add to that quickly. I know that I mentioned libertarian economic stuff earlier, but there's another angle to that too. This is why when people act like everything anti-white and everything bad for us is all the small hats, or it's all, you know, this evil cabal, the Satanists. No, many of our own evil people did this to us. Men in control of the United States machine during the propaganda era, during the big wars of the early 1900s, they wanted obedient, faux patriotic drones that would do what they were told. And you cannot, with the pushback against all that was done under FDR and the years that came after that, they said, look, all of these people with these insular communities that don't need our industrialization, that don't want it, we have to break them. So what did we get? The ideal 50s. That was not Marxist communism, but it was that kind of thing, that kind of idea given to the Americans. Compete with your fellow man. Nobody lives in multi-generational households. Everyone has to compete for these corporate jobs. Everyone has to have your own little house and your own plot of land. They wanted to pull as many people away from families and traditional communities as possible and have us all in our little organized suburbs. Now, that's not Marxist at all. That is extraordinarily capitalist and very American, but a very negative, greedy part of our biospirit. And those evil men helped push us to where we are today for this soulless, we have to break this traditional stuff to have all of these obedient drones. And the best way to do that is what Chris just said. You make them all go to public school, to the state indoctrination centers.
And you will notice as well that certain ethnic groups or class groups that adhere to a different schooling system. I'm talking about the Muslims, the Jewish community, I think the Sikh community as well in the UK, are much more resistant to this effect because they are not taught in state schools and not propagandized the same way. And I think that certain groups are well aware of this and do not want their children going to these schools. There's a big push at the moment in the UK to make sure that no one white anyway, is homeschooled because, well, you know, we can't leave any child behind. I don't believe this. Now, one of the reasons for this massive ontological shock is the immense amount of effort that has been expended by the UK state and academic class to cover up this scandal and defame and arrest anyone speaking about it, specifically the racial and religious element. In the liberal mindset, all races and religions must be equally valid, lest people start thinking that some are better than others, which is, quote, what the Nazis did. That's literally, like, again, shout out to Scrump Monkey. I keep thinking of his analogy of the crayon drawing. Because really, that's basically what exists in the heads of most people. A very poorly defined crayon drawing that, when scrutinized, makes no sense. But when looked at far enough away, when not considered, suffices as a propaganda plank, essentially.
Yeah. From a distance, you're like, okay, I guess I can see how that's a house and that's a sun, like a kid's crayon drawing.
Yeah.
And like we say in the Go Free method, one of the main curatives we have is Hollywood isn't history. But unfortunately, it is to 90% of people's minds. Indeed,
the UK state has now assumed the exact qualities that I outlined in our episode on race Leninism. It exists to defend racial inequality under the guise of equality. It's quite weird to sort of realize that race Leninism, in a way, is already here. Now, I'm sure that some people would be like, "Oh my God, you took something from Lenin, you know, woke right detected." But this is clearly true. It is manifestly a function of the state to prevent the rise of white ethnic organization, while simultaneously aiding and protecting organizations of other ethnic groups. They don't care about Pakistani supremacists, Hindu, Ashkenazi, African, or any other kind of religious or ethnic supremacy. There was a brief period where Muslim supremacy was seen as a problem, but the organizations set up to combat it were quickly neutered and subverted. Talking about prevent here. And it may surprise people viewing that there is no vetting to check for Islamic extremism if you work for prevent, which is now aimed squarely at the white English. Additionally, there has been an incredible amount of academic malfeasance to try and cover this topic up. Much of it from this woman, Ella Cobain, I believe is how you pronounce this, although the spelling makes me think of something different. Now, Cobain was cited many, many times for a long time before the sort of current outbreak of sanity that was pioneered by Elon Musk. The white English were told continually that, yes, the rape gangs did exist, but actually, don't you know, white people did more of it. So really, it's racist for you to worry about it. This is a clear and common attack line, and Cobain is used as a primary source for this in government justifications. However, it is important to establish that the result from Cobain's own study clearly show that the rape gangs are mainly Pakistani. And I would like to point out here as well that when we say in the UK that, these groups are mainly Pakistani, they're all from a very specific area of Pakistan, which is Mirpur district. Indeed, they all came over here after a dam was built in Azad Kashmir in northeastern Pakistan. Historically, Mirpur was part of the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir under the British rule until the partition of India in 1947, after which it fell under Pakistani control. Significant migration from Mirpur to the UK began in the 1960s, particularly following the construction of the Mangala Dam, which displaced many locals, and they all came to the UK. British Pakistanis of Mirpuri descent make up a considerable portion of the Pakistani diaspora in the UK, with estimates suggesting that around 60 to 80% of British Pakistanis trace their origins to the area. And who was it who made the dam that displaced all of these people? It was constructed by the Water and Power Development Authority of Pakistan, with technical and financial assistance from the United Kingdom. So it's quite easy to see like what was basically going on here. A bunch of these people were displaced, and they were like, well, why don't you go to England? So you are talking about a very ethnically homogenous group. It would be like if we went to, I don't know, around where you live, in Appalachia. And we flooded a whole section of where you live, right? And we just displaced all of your people at once into another place.
It would be like if you cut off the eastern tip of Tennessee entirely and then we all went to England.
Yes. Yeah. And it would stymie integration. You would retain your own ethnic character, because it wouldn't just be
like we've talked about 1,000 times. Like the example that I've used on Discordant Dragons with you there many times is if you take 1 million Chinese people and put let's say Japanese, because they're more ethnically homogenous. If you take 1 million Japanese people from like right around Tokyo and you put them on a colony ship and you send them to the third nearest planet, however many light years away, they will make Japan again there because they're still Japanese. And it's the same way with this. It's basically a Pakistani colony ship from this particular area that has been dropped into the UK.
And apparently they are not well regarded in Pakistan either, as 007 points out. Most Pakistanis, when given any choice in marriage partner, will beg their parents, please anyone but a Mirpuri. It doesn't sound like a ringing endorsement. So Cobain's research, her own study, showed that 80% of the gang rapists were of Pakistani descent. But of course, being a woke white woman, I believe, oh my God, what is it with white people, bros? She is not going to let such details as data get in the way of her ideology. After she herself found the above results, she wrote a report for The Guardian, of course, claiming that grooming gangs are not a Muslim problem. Well, that's sort of correct. Islam is a very large religion. This is specifically a Pakistani Mirpuri problem. And stating it is a Muslim problem is, quote, a far-right stereotype that has spread widely in the media. And that, quote, if we really want to tackle this issue, we have to stop fixating on the lurid and false distraction of Muslim grooming gangs. But I mean, if you said they're Pakistani rape gangs, it's the same thing, right? The only
And also, go ahead. Sorry.
The only people who are allowed to be collectively blamed for anything basically at this point is the whites.
And she is kind of right here, despite being wrong. I don't necessarily think it's a Muslim problem either. It's a white erasure problem. It is bringing in, like you said, a whole colony ship of foreigners that have no reason and no encouragement to integrate, and then literally genocidally bombing the population with that exterior population. The problem, it doesn't matter if they were Japanese or whatever, or African or whatever, it's still incredibly harmful and destructive, even if they weren't doing all of this horrible terroristic rape gang stuff. But they are doing it, so it's even worse.
Indeed. So, I mean, my driving instructor is a Bengali Muslim. And when I informed him about this, his response was, well, you should hang them all. So, you know, to which I was like, well, that's very based. He was like, why haven't you hung them? Well, you know, now we are all familiar with the corruption of academia, especially with COVID and the other abuses that academia has been put to. However, there has been so much protection, so much confusion, interference run in the name of protecting these groups in order to protect the post-war multicultural narrative. Cobain has called Suella Braverman overtly racist for saying that grooming gangs were mainly Muslim. A bit tricky because Suella Braverman was not white.
And also, Islam isn't a race. What the hell is up with this? I see a lot of this rhetoric coming from anti-white shitheads in the UK. They say when you talk against Muslims or against Islam, that's quote unquote racist. But Islam isn't a race; it's a religion. It's not like Judaism.
Well, I've got more on that actually.
Okay, sure,
in
sure,
a bit.
okay.
What we're really seeing is, in my opinion, the clash of the Islamic and Jewish lobbies.
Okay, cool. Go ahead then.
Right. So this is the kind of cope that is going on. You know, you're racist for noticing the very thing that she found in her original paper. It can be seen that the greatest effrontery about grooming is not the abuse of children, but the interracial sex itself. Well, I mean, if these people weren't here, it wouldn't be happening, number one. And there is a massive difference in the number of victims, the severity of the abuse, and just the general attitude of the Pakistani rapists themselves. Of course, the classic cope that the racialization of grooming gangs must also be understood in the context of a long history of racialized and gendered Islamophobia or anti-Muslim racism. I'm not a big one for Schadenfreude, but I cannot help but think that if Cobain herself were to find herself stranded in certain parts of Pakistan, she would find out very, very quickly, in fact, that she was wrong about this. We contend...
Not that we would wish such a thing on her.
We contend that genuinely practiced anti-racist feminism is vital in tackling child sexual abuse and resisting anti-Muslim forces. Bloody hell. It was then going on to say it's a moral panic. For a while, for I think about 10 years, the official Wikipedia page was the grooming gang moral panic. So, you know, yeah. So
it's just a moral panic when your government imports foreigners that rape 250,000 of your daughters. Just a moral panic.
This is the Wikipedia page. I had a look at it. Grooming gang moral panic in the United Kingdom. I think it's been changed in about the last week. Obviously, the heat has gotten too large. A report from the Home Office, not a neutral source, was unable to prove any link between sexual assault and South Asian ethnicity. This is a total lie. White perpetrators who make up the majority race in the UK have been shown to be more represented in sexual assault and group-based sexual abuse crimes than any other ethnicity in the United Kingdom. Again, that's wrong, and also per capita. The report suggests that there is likely no connection between ethnicity and CSA. However, despite the lack of evidence, British media outlets have reinforced the stereotype by disproportionately reporting on South Asian group-based sexual assault crimes. Look, it's Wikipedia, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's Wikipedia.
And
it's all...
I think that it's laughable when you know the things that we do. When you read something that says, "Oh, the media just chooses to focus on the non-whites raping the whites." It's like, yes, the same anti-white media that lies every single day with all this anti-whiteism. Like, yes, they're running screen for Whitey, who they hate. God, it's just so, it's disgusting.
It's basically everywhere. It has been going on for decades and decades. And as I said, it's the sort of multicultural narrative that has given people the excuse that they need, people in local government, people in the police, to not investigate groups that are known to be very, very violent and to stick together. And I'm sure you've heard some of the horrible, horrible tales that have gone on as a result. I really liked this Substack article from Lady of Shalott, who I believe Yiz knows.
I've known her for many years. She's a lovely lady, and I hope that she's listening. And I appreciate you and all that you've done over the years, lady. And you're always welcome around here if you ever want to come over and visit my channel.
Very good article. Highly recommended.
And it's in the info links in the stream. Wherever you're listening to this, you can go read her lovely Substack article. There's the link down there.
And this is a great quote. I came to see that it was a collision of national and local government obsessed with their multiculturalism project, a protected group with tribal thinking, local authorities riddled with incompetence who couldn't give a fuck, a police force with an established culture of cover-up, and a backdrop of social, economic, and moral decline, peak demoralization. Well, I couldn't have said it better myself, to be perfectly honest. There have been many days during the last 4 years, this is Lady of Shalott again, when I secretly longed for it all to come to an end. It was just too bleak. The details of the crimes too grotesque, too calculated to make one utterly despair of human nature. In those dark days, it was always the girls and their families who kept me going. Some victims understandably broke and sank without a trace. Others remarkably survived. They went through months and years of self-hating misery, but sometimes with admirable support from specialist projects have shown extraordinary resilience to build a future for themselves. They decided to trust me with their story, and they are the closest this tale will ever come to having heroes or heroines. Yeah. Now, as I said before, one of the reasons that this is blowing up at the moment, in my opinion, is the pushing into Parliament of the anti-Islamophobia law. I don't have the actual... I really should have this in the browser. But essentially, I believe what is happening is that the Zionists, the Jewish community, they do not want the Muslims to have the equivalent of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which has been adopted by most political parties, which defines very clearly what you can and cannot say about Israel and its people. And as we covered on the other episode, which I think is two-tier speech and client groups, the Muslims essentially copied the Islamophobia definition pretty much point for point straight from the IHRA anti-Semitism definition. So the question about, given that many of the counter jihad groups, people like, Douglas Murray and Kissen and other people who are big sort of fans of the nation of Israel, do they really care about what is happening to the white working class? Or are they so scared of the twin rise of Islam and the possible rise of white racial identity that they are finally willing to give whites a break? These are potentially complex motives at play here. Balance of Power Politics, Divide and Rule states that power blocks must be equally balanced. If one power block declines in influence too much, it must be bolstered. If another gains too much influence, it must be neutered. This is one way of looking at what is going on in the UK. The Islamic leftist power bloc is becoming too powerful, whilst at the same time the whites are getting crushed. It is crucial that they contain the rise of ethno-nationalism in favour of civic nationalism. But civic nationalism cannot work without widespread buy-in, and it is clear that much of the white population is completely checking out of the system and is plagued by epistemic mistrust, which is a fancy academic way of saying they have completely lost all faith in government and its institutions.
Yep.
I would say personally that the problem is much worse. There are many people who have gone past a belief of mistrust to a belief that the government is actively trying to kill them and their children.
That's what most people around here believe now, Chris. Even my boomer family, like even my mother, who is like super Jesus-y and wants to love thy neighbor and thinks we're all God's children. Like even recently, she's like, "Yes, we just can't do this anymore. These people have to go back." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know.
Thanks for joining us. Yeah, exactly. For many people, just having the government not care about them would seem a blessing compared to the number of laws and policies that actively discriminate against them. Now, another possibility that would explain this is that since the outbreak of war in Israel, I've started noticing a trend on Jewish Twitter of Jews, I don't know where they're from, saying, quote, that Ishmael is now Amalek. Now, in Jewish religious thought, Islam are the descendants of Ishmael, while the Christians were the descendants of Esau. For a long time, Esau was Amalek, the eternal enemy of the Jews. Amalek is I believe he was like a warlord that did a bunch of bad stuff to the Jewish community back in the before 4 times. For a long time, Esau was Amalek. Since Amalek was a descendant of Esau, this made sense and was a coded way of expressing Jewish dislike for Christianity. However, things have now gotten so bad that religious Jews may be asking themselves whether having Esau as Amalek really makes sense, given the massive inroads they have made in the West with Christian Zionism. Now, oh wait, I had more written about this. Yes, if the new definition of anti-Semitism passes, then Jewish people could be prosecuted for criticizing Islam. This is clearly an intolerable situation for those who are very comfortable with the current situation where it is illegal to say many things about the Jewish community. The fact that the things you are not allowed to say under the proposed definition of Islamophobia are undoubtedly true should perhaps give people pause when they consider the IHRA definitions. Until Christians get these same protections, no other religious group should get them. We can either have no hate crimes or everyone must be subject under the law to them equally. I would prefer to have none, but there is no way that that is going to happen. Like an old man who has injured himself, we told ourselves that World War II had made us stronger, but it had not. The cost of that war to abandon any hint of ethno-nationalism under the lie that if we did not, the Nazis would return has made the entire West much weaker. Although these policies really did not filter through until the 60s, when the children of those who fought in the war had grown up in the now communist schools and the damage had been done. Now, one of the reasons why these small ethnic groups can attain such power is an inherent flaw with democracy itself. Far from favoring the majority, hang on, just let me put on an image here. Far from favoring the majority, democracy explicitly favors the organized minority. A society where there are 2 groups of roughly equal numbers of people that vote for 2 different parties is actually the most powerful position for an organized minority. Consider, One quality of an organized minority is that they can get everyone in it to vote the same way because they are organized and have minority interests, also language, culture, and patronage groups. If they can get everyone in a minority group to vote the same way, then in a close electoral race, they can demand concessions from both parties because their homogenous block of votes may actually be the deciding number that costs the party the election. If we have two groups, both of which who will vote 48% for one of their two parties of choice, the homogenous group who will all vote the same way at 4% of the population will actually wind up deciding the vote. If this minority is growing, then this effect is magnified. You have a seesaw, effectively, both ends with the same amount of weight balanced on them, and a dwarf sitting on the fulcrum deciding the outcome. I believe this is one of the reasons why the Islamic bloc is so powerful in countries such as the UK. If they form their own political party, which I predict will happen in the next few years, then they may wind up with a permanent balance of power unless enough of the population congregates around one political pole. This could happen with the right, given the right-leaning tendency of the modern youth, and as a result, they will try to prevent this at all costs. The only real way out of this bind is to either deny these groups the franchise, which will never happen, or enough of the divided masses unite around a common ethnic or religious identity. It cannot be civic nationalism because there is just too much difference between them. The border of this group must be rigid so as to prevent subversion. This is a great advantage of ethnically based or religious-based parties based on exclusive admission, such as the Jews and to a lesser extent the Muslims. Say what you like about the Jewish community, but they have this locked down. They have strict ethno-nationalism combined with a religious grouping that cannot be infiltrated by other actors. This is why they are so incredibly successful.
And don't forget, they have people with money, influence, connection, and political power who put their own people first. And we don't anymore. We haven't for generations. That's why we're in this pickle. So we should emulate that aspect of them, not try to purge it from ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. I think they are an excellent model to follow, honestly. What is needed is an organized majority, which is pretty much what most people mean when they think of fascism. Scare quotes. This organized majority would have to be organized, thus it would take on militaristic tendencies. It must have a rigid exclusion criteria, making it seem cruel. People who are edge cases might be ruthlessly excluded. There would certainly be excesses, but it is the only way that you could conceivably have a government that actually looked out for native interest if any of these interests conflicted with minority groups. Since the government is also about who gets money and resources, literally any action by government to protect its native population would be looked on unfavorably, since the minority group believes that they should get all of the money, power, and influence. I think that's basically it.
Okay.
Oh, yes, I would just like to note as well that this has been going on for a long time, the grooming gangs thing, not just in the UK, but also in Germany. Some of you who are old enough may remember this book, Christian F. Wir Kinder vom Bahnhof Zoo. Bahnhof Zoo Station in Berlin is was a notorious child prostitution spot, and the movie made famous when David Bowie starred in it is the story of Christian Felchenau.
David Bowie, like a Bowie knife.
Bowie, whatever, right?
He's only like the most famous British guy in the history of the world. I don't know, like maybe you could say his name.
Tomato. You know what I mean? I had something written about this. But the thing is, this is not in the movie, but if you read the book, despite being a bit of a party girl, it is Turkish immigrants that originally introduce her to smoking heroin and to prostitution around Zoo Station. This has been going on for a very long time.
They view us like cattle, and our children are taught to view them the same as everyone else.
In conclusion, I don't think this is really going to change. The current tenor of the West is such that multiculturalism is its most important feature. Will there be enough epistemic shock to actually undermine the fundamental pillar of the post-war regime. We wait on tenterhooks to see, even if a putatively right-wing party gets into power, like Reform, it is likely to attempt a CivNat solution to something that cannot be solved this way. Thus, it is more likely to, try and sort of clean the edges rather than trying to do anything that would fundamentally resolve the problem, and then say, oh yes, we care about you, this is how we're going to do it. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how long this pillar holds up. Obviously, speech controls, thought controls, academic controls are very, very important in the aid of this project. And Elon Musk freeing Twitter, and it looks like Zuckerberg is about to free Facebook, may be the deciding sort of blow to this world order. I don't know. I guess we will wait and see.
This is why we have to keep pushing, and that's what my piece is actually about tonight. Do you want to go to Embiggen View and move to what I have prepared now?
Yes, we will Embiggen.
Okay. This pillar of multiculturalism is exactly what I want to talk to you about tonight, and I am a little more optimistic than Chris because I have been paying attention to this for a little over twice as long as Chris has, and I have seen how far the needle has moved. And it is tremendous compared to when I started paying attention around 12 years ago. And let me just get into my presentation here. And as promised, I will put up the little reminder banner here. There we go. I want to talk about the pillar that Chris mentioned of multiculturalism. We have been groomed, pun intended, for decades by the evil moral order, or immoral order, if you will, of the anti-white narrative. We have all been raised in this narrative. So were our parents. We all bleed red. People of the world unite. One race, the human race. And the list goes on and on. All these mantras were taught to us from childhood, to our parents from childhood. Even those of us who are old and went to school many decades ago, like myself, we were taught that then too. Like Chris laid out for you earlier, we have all been gaslit and traumatized into believing our destruction is moral, that our literal genocide, or ethnocide in the British case, is what we should strive for as a society. All narratives rest upon structural pillars which uphold it and sustain it. And the more fortified these pillars are, the harder it becomes to challenge them via methods that our people believe should be the ways they challenge authority, meaning discourse, collective moral action, and nonviolent political engagement. However, we have been denied all of these. As we've covered many times on this stream series and in our other work, Chris and I have illustrated how the current regime has been constructing a new moral order since the Great War period of the early 1900s. The core of this regime's narrative is simple. If white people care about themselves, then that's literally Hitler and the Nazis. And since that's the externalized evil which we defeated, that cannot be allowed. White well-being, the well-being of our entire tapestry of European ethnicities, is the original sin in this evil narrative. And so they cast that sin into a chicken and then killed it to absolve the regime of any guilt or responsibility in our destruction. This narrative is so counter to both our natural instincts and common sense of the white man that it required the implementation of the largest, most overwhelming program of propaganda in the history of the world. I could talk about the particulars of this for hours. In fact, I even made a channel about it. But for the sake of this presentation, I'll summarize it all in a single phrase. The West is an idea, not a race. And that idea is one of multicultural liberal democracy. This lie is what we have been crucified with. The thousands and thousands of institutional lies all hang on this crucifix. Multiculturalism, i.e. multiracialism, is what's good for you, white man, and if you disagree, you're Hitler. That's it. That's the pillar right there. Therefore, you cannot talk about our victimization because doing so is immoral in the anti-white narrative. The moral order we were raised in and still suffer under today, because doing so would dispel the illusion of this core pillar or core tenet. In my opinion, this is why the regime will fall, because this pillar is already cracked. There have been wise men talking about how this core pillar is wrong and flawed for decades. We have one named Jason in the chat with us tonight. But it couldn't gain ground because people in our countries didn't have the internet, They didn't have things in front of them where they could see it, and they were all mostly comfortable and wealthy who saw a decent future ahead, whether that was true or not. But that's no longer the case, is it? Not a single person listening to this right now thinks that we have a guaranteed, solid, good, or even decent future with what we've seen the last 15 years. For the last 30 years, even, we have all watched things become worse. Financial disasters, more forever wars, billionaire bailouts, unprecedented mass migration, the erasure of our towns and communities in less than a decade in some cases, the loss of generational wealth, the purposeful removal of our industries and technologies from our countries, which led to millions of professional white men who built the modern world losing access to wealth to provide security for their families. And in the last decade, we've been bombarded with literal anti-white terrorism. This last part has become so prevalent that not even the trillion-dollar anti-white media apparatus can hide it from the common man anymore. BLM, Antifa, any of the other brands of anti-white terrorists, they're all allowed to make our cities unlivable hellholes while the police do effectively nothing to stop it, or in some cases endorse it. The rotten people in the judicial and political constructs in our countries use a two-tier system to silence and punish white people while allowing the anti-white terrorists to escape justice. Even worse, international NGOs work directly with our rotten governments to import a never-ending deluge of foreigners, purposefully pushing them into more and more rural areas by design. White flight is over. There's nowhere else for us to go. We are backed into a corner and we are losing everything. And millions of us see it now. We know it because we have lived it. I say all of this not to discourage or black pill you, but to empower you. I want you to have hope and to have fire where our forefathers, our aunts and uncles, grandparents, and even our parents failed. We can't fail. The beast is weakening. The structure is collapsing because we have kept pushing. This narrative is on the ropes, and its Achilles heel is becoming more and more exposed to anyone who will look. The purposeful rape of 250,000 white British girls at the hands of foreigners who explicitly say they rape our kids because they hate us and see us as livestock and trash, this can't be overlooked or brushed away. We can speak with passionate conviction about this now, but we must do so intelligently to finally break this core pillar of anti-whiteism. We can use the revelations about anti-white rape gangs as an evergreen touchstone to smash every argument in favor of multiculturalism or democracy. Any idea or concept that supports these things, we fight with righteous indignation and the truth. And it's not a hidden, obscure truth that some weirdo in a trailer has to pull out of a book. No, it's everywhere. A rich billionaire, Elon Musk, talks about it on his social media platform. Thousands of media pundits are being forced to talk about it. Politicians are wringing their hands and afraid of their own shadow because of it. It's big and it's real, and we can show it to everybody. But we have to use the right words and come at it from the right mindset. Don't come at it hating the Jew or hating the Muslim or hating the foreigner. Don't come at this and get lost in abstractions talking about communists and NGOs and internationalists and this and that. Stay on point. Call it white erasure. Call it anti-white. Call it anti-white terror attacks. Anti-white, whatever you want to call it. Rape gangs. Don't say grooming gangs. That's a cancerous, stupid phrase, and everybody listening knows that. Call it terrorism, biological white erasure. Always, always make it about your love for your people and your culture and wanting to end the victimization of us. I don't care about abstractions, and I don't care about economic factors. I don't care about who exploited who centuries ago. I don't care about political parties. I don't care if I'm called left or far right or whatever. What I care about is the well-being of my people and the future for white children. That's what you should care about too. This is why they are afraid of Hitler. Why do you think that you never get to hear or read subtitles of what he actually said? Because it would resonate with you. A righteously indignant, angry white man that says the suffering and the torment of our children will stop and we will end it. I don't care about a swastika. I don't care about speaking German, and I don't even care about the minutiae of World War II. But I care about my people and my race. And you should too. And any man who has the strength and the conviction to speak loudly about this, it's like God standing before a demon to these anti-whites. They run in fear and crap their pants because they know that they can't stand in front of that when it gets rolling. That's why they are afraid, and that is why this is how we must speak, and this is the fire we have to carry to defeat this. So take that passion and that fire with you into every argument, into every boardroom, into every job you have, into every church you go into. But speak with love, conviction, and compassion, and we will win. And that's the end of my piece tonight.
Well said. Well said. Also, I'd like to point out, if you remember my piece on sixth generational warfare, particularly in countries where there can't really be any organized resistance, what I said was that the only real sort of line of attack is to undermine the legitimacy of the oppressive government, essentially. And this is exactly what is happening. Because at this point, particularly in countries like the UK, any kind of mass action is not only doomed to failure, but is likely, in fact, to simply strengthen the government, give it more excuses for crackdowns, like we saw with the riots in Southport. Their real Achilles heel is their legitimacy and the lack of buy-in to the system. And I think we are now getting to a point where the lack of buy-in is becoming critical. This is the way the shell game is played. You can only really use coercive force against a small number of people. You can't. There just aren't enough police. There isn't enough government to constantly have a police watching over every single person. They need buy-in, and events such as this are massively damaging to the legitimacy of the government. I'm not a massive fan of reform for reasons I just said. Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a massive fan of Farage, but if there is a rise of a third political party, and if reform do actually get in, it would at least be progress in the right direction. It would certainly be better than another conservative government. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few years, particularly in the UK, and see what the fallout of this. Remember, the Southport trial is coming up in about 10 days. Where there is about to be another massive legitimacy undermining blow to the idea of multiculturalism, possibly involving just outright lies by the government. It becomes this sort of cycle. In order to maintain control, the government must lie more. They must lie more boldly. And every single time one of these lies is uncovered, it further destabilizes the thought regime.
Indeed. Well, Chris, that was an excellent presentation from you, and I know that I don't feel my best, and I've had a very rough day, one of the roughest days I've had in a while. And I feel like that we nailed this, though. Your presentation and factoids and your discussion was great, and I feel like the speech that I prepared and practiced in the mirror a couple times, it came out well. It came out
it was
right.
awesome. Yeah, it was really
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah.
And I mean every word that I said, guys. I don't believe that like power and fixing everything comes from the bottom up, that a bunch of angry commoners can fix everything. But we are a people, and we should be connected rich and poor. We should be connected rural and city folk by being folk. And if you don't care about that above other things, then you don't have your mind in the right place to win this war. And this is why I encourage all of you to read and truly understand the Go Free Method book. It helps. It helps put your mind in the right place of how to think and speak on all this stuff and not get lost in the weeds and say stuff that shoots yourself in the foot in arguments. You have to be convicted and speak with genuine love and admiration for your own people and your own culture. And your righteous fire and hatred needs to be directed at people who want to sabotage the lives of our progeny. Not immigrants, not small hats, not mudslimes, not Jeets. No. You need to focus that hatred at anyone of any background or any type or any strata of culture that actively stands in the way or sabotages the well-being of our people. That's who the bad guy is, not just because of the way someone was born halfway around the world. That's not who determines who's your oppressor or who's your enemy. It's who's in front of you threatening to kill your children. That's the determining factor of who the bad guy is. So keep that mindset and speak with conviction. and you will help us shatter this primary pillar of anti-whiteism. We can do it together.
Nice. Super chats?
We only have a couple, but
Okay.
I will refresh and make sure we're not missing anyone. We have one on entropy right now, and still no tips on subscribe. Oh no, one just came through on Subscribestar. Very good. It's from June. We'll get to that in a second. Okay, nothing there, nothing there. Okay, we will start because Jason was the first one in over on Cash App. We'll get to him. Jason in for $6. He says, Yiz is here. All is well. Folk tithe and kip. Well, thank you, Jason.
Thanks,
And
Jason.
I appreciate your dollars, friend. And again, sorry about being late, guys. I'm not doing well this week. Things are not good. And again, I knew better than to eat a frozen food from Walmart. I shouldn't have done that. Also, we have James. I think this says your real name, so I'm not going to read your last name. But James sends in 10. Oh, it's from Wyatt's. It's Wyatt's Torch. He says that before. I should have read that. Wyatt's Torch for $10 says, great stream tonight, guys. Thank you, Wyatt's Torch. I deeply appreciate that. Thank you so much, friend.
Thanks very much, mate. Appreciate it.
I do. And now my phone is frozen, so maybe I'll get back to that and check and see if there's more in a minute. Over on Subscribestar, we have from June. Oh, PayPal logged me out again. I'll refresh that while I check Subscribestar here. June, a monthly supporter and a friend of the channel. Thank you so much, June. She sends us $10 again, Chris. She does it pretty regularly. And she says, Yiz and Chris, your teaching is truly a labor of love for our white people. It touches me deeply. This does empower us. Thank you for the amazing Empire of Lies series, as well as all of your weekly presentations otherwise. Well, you're welcome, June. Thank you, sister.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful message. Thank you.
It is. And Chris and I really do care, or we wouldn't be doing what we do. Like we care. Because we certainly don't do this for the money. We don't do this for the money.
Easy ways to make money on the internet.
Like I could work a quarter of the time and make 10 times the money just making cute cat videos on TikTok if I wanted to.
Well, I will be starting my OnlyFans soon, obviously.
Over on Entropy, we only have one on Entropy tonight, and it's from Dove is Life for $3. Thank you, Dove. Dove says the silver lining is that long-term, the corruption and, quote, diversity within the system will render it easier to topple and take over. Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
All right, then. We do have one on PayPal tonight from Dawn. I should have thought to check. She sends in a lot on PayPal for $10. Thank you, Dawn. She says this one is close to my heart, and the heart is a white heart emoji. Well, Dawn, I know that many of our women go through hell, and if you have or have a friend or a sister who's gone through something like this, my heart goes out to y'all, because nobody should have to go through what this 250,000 white girls in England had to go through. It's an unspeakable living hell that none of us should ever have to go through at all at the hands of anyone, but especially foreigners who hate us and treat us like cattle or worse. All right. Let me make sure. I really need to activate my new phone. My mother bought me a new smartphone for Christmas. I just haven't activated it yet. This is an old Samsung 6, and it's like 9 years old, and I've been using it.
6, bruh.
Yeah, I've had it for ages. This is very, very old. I'm a hillbilly. I use stuff till you can't use it no more. Like,
yeah, no. I know what you mean.
Like I've got a tractor made in the 50s on my farm. It still works, and we still use it. Like, this is how it is. But anyway, that's all the paid chats that I see. So,
Jay Bishop says he sent a Cash App last week.
Oh, you did?
Check it out.
Last week.
Did Dawn send us a message with the PayPal?
Yeah, I told you.
Oh.
She said this one's close to my heart, meaning the topic of the stream. Right. And the heart was a white emoji. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Jay, you said that you sent a Cash App last week. I'm looking at the dates, and I'm not seeing it. Are you sure that it went through? Someone sent me $10 on Monday on my stream this week by the name of Murphy. Was that you? But before that, I don't have any since before Christmas. So if you sent something in, it didn't go through if it was within the last week. So, okay, that was him. Okay. No, I read that out. I read that Monday night, sweetheart. Yeah, the one from Murphy. Yeah, Discordant Dragons. I read this Monday night on stream. So you can check the replay on Odyssey and Rumble if you didn't catch it live. I read that one out on Monday. All right. Well, then, I hope that you guys all have a wonderful weekend. And I really do hope that you take to heart the things that me and Chris talked about tonight. If you care and you want to make a difference, you have to do it with love and conviction and saying the right words for the right reasons. And that is what will live on in your children, your nieces, your nephews, and anyone else you can influence. People at your church, people at work, or if you're like me and like to hound your local politicians, it'll live in their heads too if you speak on it and push in the right way. And we all should. So, well, we will be back Monday, Chris, with Discordant Dragons and Happening TV, won't we?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. If there's any new people who are not listening to the stream, I do a twice weekly news stream called Happening TV on Monday and Thursday at 8 p.m. London time. It's news of the day and, cute animal videos and stuff like that. You can find all of my links on newsfist.net. Check it out.
And also, I would like to remind you that Discordant Dragons does not stay up. I still get lots of messages on Twitter and Discord saying, yes, where'd Discordant Dragons go? Guys, my Monday stream for 2 years now has not stayed up on YouTube. It's only on Odyssey and Rumble. So this stream and all of my other work does stay up on YouTube. And I just wanted to drop that in case we have people that are listening live who might ask that about Monday. Discordant Dragons never stays up on YouTube. All right. Well, Chris, thank you for the great work. You do fantastic job on this series, and I love co-hosting with you. So
yeah, likewise.
Yeah, and you guys mean a lot to me, and I wouldn't be here doing this many years into this for this little money if it wasn't for all the support you guys give me. So I appreciate that too. Y'all have a great weekend.
Yeah, good week. Have a good weekend, everyone. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on Monday.
Good night.
Good night.